Welcome to this episode of Kyber Clips. I'm Mike Jafrida, President of Kyber Security, joined by Bob Thomas, VCIO, VCISO for Kyber Security and his clients. Welcome, Bob.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for having me. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. Thank you for asking. Tonight we're going to talk about three letters. I guess it's three letters and a short word that are causing a lot of concern in the manufacturing space as clients are looking to become CMMC compliant, and that's GCC High.
Yeah.
Bob, tell me, what is GCC High? What's the hubbub?
Okay, so GCC High is a special Microsoft government cloud that is what everybody in the Department of Defense space talks about as FedRAMP certified. So it's been approved by the Department of Defense as a certified storage location for information. And more specifically, people that are U.S. citizens are the only people that can support those data center locations that Microsoft runs. This particular GCC High is for people that are touching, creating, using, consuming CUI, controlled unclassified information. And it's not just for email, it's SharePoint, it's all the Office 365 stuff that people have been used to, OneDrive, Teams, all of it rolled up under one ball of wax that is federally certified for storing CUI information.
So we're talking about Microsoft Office 365, just another version of it. Why such a big deal?
Mostly because the federal government, with the whole CMMC guidelines and certification, they're concerned about how are you protecting that plan data, that information that shouldn't fall into outsiders' hands. How are you going to protect the data that the government and the prime contractors are sharing with you, and where is a safe place to put it? And the corporate version of Microsoft 365 is not termed safe for this information. It may seem safe, but it's not. We don't know who's supporting, who has access to that information, if they're U.S. citizens, if they're from anywhere in the world, and they don't want data leakage to be the problem.
All right, so now we've determined, okay, I need to do this GCC High thing because I need to be CMMC certified, and it's one of the check boxes I have to check.
Correct.
So I just throw my data over there. What's the process? Is there something I need to do to get started?
Yeah, so the first thing you have to do is you have to fill out an application to be approved to be allowed to use the GCC High or FedRAMP tenant. That's a special form that gets filled out, gets submitted to Microsoft, and Microsoft is essentially doing a background check on your company to make sure that, number one, you need this as part of your security, but that they are going to entrust you with putting your data in that location and that your firm is appropriate. That's the first step, and that's not a fill out a little form, hit the submit button, and 5 minutes later you say, wow, look at that, I can't believe how quickly I got approved. This is weeks, months of waiting for Microsoft to go through the process, because trust me, you're not the only one that's going to be filling out that form and asking for that approval to put data there.
Yeah, so we've heard from some clients submitted the form, or we've done it for them, and
Black hole.
Yeah, and gotten no responses. What's your recommendation or advice if that's the case?
So I think there's two crazy things. One of them is keep resubmitting. Once a week.
Just flood the system, make it worse.
Just keep. Yeah, I hate to say make it worse, but
better
maybe
flood it with your
worse.
stuff than somebody else.
Yeah, just keep pumping in this information into their system to look for an application to be approved. Clearly, Microsoft is overwhelmed, and we know they've cut staff in this area, which sounds counterintuitive, depending on why would you do this if there's so much demand, but that's what they're doing. And also enlist the help of a managed security services provider. Ask them to see if their distribution partners, their cloud service providers, can help, where places where we get our licensing from in order to help our clients. And maybe they can find a way to get status.
So I fill out the form. Magically, eventually, I get approved.
God, hopefully.
Now this is pretty standard mail migration at this point now? Flip the switch, my stuff moves over. What's that process look like? Timeline. Let's say I'm going from corporate 365 to GCC High 365.
Yeah, so I would say that move is a little simpler than moving from an alternative, whether that be Google or just on-premise Exchange or hopefully not just a hosted mailbox system someplace. But it is more work. There's a lot more security settings that have to be enabled in order to meet the requirements of being CMMC certified and compliant. So there are only certain tools that will work with the migration. So you can do it manually, which is obviously more time consuming. The same background process is required if you want to be able to set up a tenant. Yes, it's a special tenant in a special location, but it is still a tenant in Microsoft. Then you have to assign licenses. Well, they're not standard licenses. You have to get them from a certified provider. You know, we went through the process and we have access to those licenses. Not everyone does. Then you have to put those licenses into the portal. The licenses have to be applied to certain users. The users have to be created. All the background work is still required, but I think the real gotcha is how much security and lockdown has to take place around who has access, when they have access, are they using mobile devices, how are those being controlled. That's really where the gotcha comes in.
So, what would you say the biggest considerations are for the length of time it takes to do one of these migrations?
What are the biggest considerations? Well, the wild card is this application process. We don't know how long any one application is going to take. You know, it could take a week or two. It could take a month or two. You have to factor that in if you're trying to get there and quote unquote get there quickly. That's a gotcha. Mailbox size is a big component. If you have a 1 gig mailbox as your average mailbox size and you have 50 of them, compare that to I've got 10 mailboxes but they're 50 gigs each. That's a big difference because no matter where you're coming from as a mailbox provider or where you're moving to, they don't open up the bandwidth pipe this big. They throttle it down, and you will only get so much information uploaded into the system to be synchronized, if you will, from one mailbox to another as they're going to allow you. You know, you go to Google and you're trying to move away, it's 1 gig a day. 1 gig a day, and you've got a 50 gig mailbox, you've got 2 months worth of migration time just for one person.
Yikes.
So that's a big consideration, and you can't do anything until at least the first pass has taken place. And then you've got these little synchronizations for all the data changes that have happened since you started that big sweep through, let's call it.
So how about, let's talk about numbers a little bit. How's the licensing price-wise compare to traditional corporate licensing that everybody's...
Yeah, so there is quote-unquote different licensing. It's not like E3, it's G3, and it's not E5, it's G5 for the government versions of these. And mandatory, at least 1 year prepayment of the licensing. There is no month-to-month option to pay for licensing, so that's something you have to know because it's cash flow. And then I think another thing that's really important is you don't have all these other versions of licensing. You don't have Exchange Online as like a $4 option. We're talking about normal E3 plus 30 to 40% more to get to G3. And that's what you should expect the uplift is to get into the government cloud.
Gotcha. All right. Well, this is great information. Sounds like if you're looking to get CMMC compliant and get your stuff into GCC High, you better start submitting early and start submitting often.
Yeah, you've got to stay on top of it.
Thanks for the information, Bob, and we hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Kyber Clips.
Great. Thanks, Mike.
Hi, thanks for joining us today on Kyber Clips. I hope you enjoyed the information. If you liked what you saw, please subscribe to our channel. You can comment below, or you can always reach out to us at sales@kybersecure.com. Hope you have a great day.